Welcome back to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast brought to you by Violet Defense. Violet Defense is dedicated to protecting our world from germs by bringing the power of UV disinfection to everyday spaces. Their patented technology enables them to harness the power of the sun to incorporate ultraviolet light into products and environments like never before. Whether you're ready to implement existing products or if you'd like to explore researching and developing a custom deployment of their technology for your school, Violet Defense has the solutions and the experience you need. Thanks again to Violet Defense for sponsoring the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thank you to Sideline Interactive. We actually have a Sideline Interactive indoor scoring table in our gym, and it is fantastic. I really encourage you to check it out. It's become harder and harder to fund an athletic department these days, but Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 or more every year, while also creating excitement in the gym and the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or call at 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo to see their tables and boards in action and see what these fantastic products can do for you. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com to check out their indoor scoring tables and video boards. We also want to say thank you to Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your athletic program. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also gives the 95% of the players and the parents who love your program a voice and help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience can have for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials. Then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466. You can also email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. athleticsurveys.com by Lifetrack. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. We also want to thank Varsity Brands, elevating student experiences in sport, spirit, and achievement, along with Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We are staying right here in the great state of Florida, and we're going to visit with Vicky Merino. Victoria is a registered athletic administrator, and she's the athletic director at the City of Hialeah Educational Academy in Hialeah, Florida. Victoria, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Well, we connected, online, which is kind of the norm these days. Various athletic director groups and professional organizations, and wanted to get you on. We're always excited to hear about, let's say, a newer, younger member of our profession and kind of share their perspective. So let's jump right in. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you went to school, and how you ended up in Hialeah.
So it's a funny story. So I actually grew up in upstate New York, near Utica, in a small town called New Hartford. And I graduated from SUNY Cortland in 2013 with my degree in physical education. My goal was to always become an AD, and speaking with ADs up in New York while doing my student teaching, they told me it was great that I got it in PE because I actually leaned towards sports management for a little bit, but they said that would be more geared towards professional sports, not so much like the high school sport aspect of it. And then they recommended I get my master's in health, and then I would go for, is it the CSE, where it's, you'd be the same license for principals, right, pretty much. So that's the route I started to take. I did start my master's in health, and then I moved to Florida because getting a job in upstate New York for PE is very difficult. And so I was applying everywhere. It was either Florida or Alaska. So yeah, I chose South Florida, not Alaska. And I met my now husband and kind of didn't end up going back to New York, which was the original plan. But so I didn't finish my master's in health because at that point it wasn't something I wanted to do. And talking to ADs down here, they actually recommended Ohio University for my master's in athletic administration. So I started that route. I finished that in 2019 and started applying for jobs pretty much anywhere. It's a lot of roadblocks when you don't have that experience yet. But then City of Hialeah, Cohia for short, so you don't have to say the whole mouthful. They they really liked me. They took a chance hiring someone who hasn't really been in as an athletic director yet, and they took a chance and they hired me, and here we are. And my husband was born and raised in Hialeah, so now we've come full circle.
So you're part of that rare group of native Floridian there. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that is really cool. It's got to be exciting. It's just starting out in your career, of course, but also your program there at City Hialeah is pretty darn new. Talk a little bit about that and what's going on with your program.
So, yeah, it is pretty spanking new. We don't even have a gym yet. So we are connected to the athletic department. We're connected to the rec center. So it's Slade Park is right behind my school. We're connected to them when we use their fields, and they actually do let us use their recreational center for classes. But we're also connected to the fire department and the police academy. So a lot of our kids who may not go to college can also take that route. So at first they didn't even have an athletic program, and then more kids started to come in and say, hey, why don't you have sports? So they started it. It started out with just baseball. If you are from Florida and know Hialeah, you know that is pretty much baseball country. And that was the only sport they had for a couple years. And then they added basketball and soccer and volleyball and girls volleyball. So, and that's pretty much what they ran with for a little bit. And those have been the core. Boys volleyball did come later. Right now, I did manage to get up off the ground for this season boys cross country. So we did start a cross country team. We are trying to grow it. It's been hit and miss. Last year, there was no AD here. The assistant principal was running the show. And you can imagine trying to be an assistant principal plus an AD at the same time. He was treading water. So they had basketball, volleyball, and baseball. And that was it. So this year we did get cross country up off the ground. We're getting girls basketball up off the ground. We're starting a softball team. We did get boys soccer going. They're working on their schedules right now. And then for the spring, we have girls flag football this year. So already, added 4 sports that have been kind of floundering in the past that we are trying desperately hard. All the girls keep coming to me like, can we have this sport? Can we have this sport? So that's our goal for this year. And then hopefully next year we're moving into middle school, start a solid middle school program.
There we go. I'm a professional podcaster. That's got to be exciting, and certainly all the best as you move forward. I have lots of contacts in that area. If you'd like some mentors, and I'm certainly be glad to help out. Talking about mentors, you're just at the start of your career, but you didn't just appear here. You had some help along the way. So share a little bit those people that had an impact on you, maybe family members or teachers or coaches you had growing up. Who helped get you to where you're at today?
So one of my biggest influences was my high school softball coach, John Cunningham. I'm pretty sure he's still there. He took a risk on me when I was playing softball. I didn't think I was going to be like that great. I was trying to be a shortstop, and then I switched to catching, and he really took a chance on me. But he, to this day, is one of the, like, when I think of my career in sports, is the coach I respect the most. And that's out of college coaches, all my high school coaches with the sports I played. And he ran the recreation center that was next to our high school. And he kind of showed me what that was like. Just watching him run all the parks where I grew up kind of piqued my interest a little bit. Now, I know that's not the AD route, but it piqued my interest in it. And then talking to there was an AD at Whitesboro in New York where I grew up, that kind of, I was floundering, like, do I want to do recreational or do I want to go into AD? And he kind of let me shadow him for a little bit. And that's when I realized, yeah, this is what I want to do. And then coming down here, Paul Herforth at University School, we bump heads sometimes. We both have that personality, but I mean, he really did show me, like, watching him, I learned things that were good, and I learned things like, hey, I would change that a little bit. But I was with him for 5 years as his coach. He supported me no matter what. He supported me. I had cancer, actually, and he supported me through that whole thing when I was there. And even though I'm not there anymore, and he's still someone who would say, hey, if you need anything, you can call me. And also Ed Miller at Somerset Pines. He's been, that no one works harder than that guy. I don't know how he does it. Now, I guess he's also an assistant principal there and the AD. And sometimes I wonder if he sleeps at night. But just watching him, like, I coached softball for him for a season, and it baffles me how he does this. I feel like I'm drowning sometimes, and he has like 5 jobs, and I don't know how he does it. But just watching those two guys down here and the programs they were able to develop from nothing at those schools is amazing. And those two are definitely 2 people I look up to, and I still call when I get baffled. I call them, and they'll set me straight.
I always love hearing these stories, and you brought a memory back for me. I used to work alongside of, I was at different school, but Ed Miller when I was down in South Florida. Yeah, you're right. What a great guy. Next time you see Ed, tell him that Jake said hi. That's fantastic.
Oh, I will. Yeah, I emailed him the other day. I had a question, and he got right back to me. And now his small circle, I guess, his assistant AD now, and also his baseball coach, RB Sosa, knew my husband really well. So he's like, your husband was basically my son in high school, so now you're my daughter by adoption. So there we go.
Actually, I'm going to do my own dirty work. I'm going to email Ed and tell him I need to get him on the podcast. So.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, Victoria, we already mentioned, you're a registered athletic administrator, and you talked about the Ohio University online program. We do have a lot of younger and older ADs that listen. And I think it's important for them to understand the journey that we all take on the certification process. You're, not at the very beginning, but you're on that path.
Yeah.
Share a little bit about how you first became aware of the LTI programs and the courses that you've taken, and maybe how they've helped you as a young AD so far.
So I became aware of it when at Ohio we had, it was before COVID, thank God. So we actually had our conference in Ohio, and that's when Aaron Wright, one of the main professors I had, mentioned the NIAAA. Here we go, if I can get it out. And how you start with your RAA, and he walked us through all the courses that we've already taken as part of our curriculum to start the process. And I looked into it, and I was like, oh, that's how that works. And so I spoke to him, and those courses today, I go back and check like my work and stuff, like the budgets, how I did the spreadsheets, how to I had to talk to one of my coaches the other day about budgets, and he of course was saying how come baseball gets everything. And I remember the lesson Aaron taught us about budgets, about how boys football typically is the big money maker in high school sports. For us, it's baseball in Hialeah, and how basically football pays for everybody else. So I remember that lesson so specifically with Aaron that I reference that lesson all the time with my coaches when they start complaining, like, how come baseball? I was like, listen guys, because of baseball I can pay you as a coach. And that stuck with me, and I still talk to Aaron too on LinkedIn. I'll message him if I get stuck. And just the connections I've made through Ohio, it has helped me tenfold since I started this position, even though I've only been here 3 months.
You got to go on the NIAAA portal and put that in as a blurb. I guarantee you they'll use that as a PSA announcement. What a great example of how the LTIs work. And the other thing specifically about baseball or football is those things cost more. It costs money for catcher's gear. It
Yeah.
costs money to have a pitching machine and things like that compared to, you mentioned cross country. What's that cost? A singlet and a pair of shorts.
Yeah,
So,
that's it.
yeah, so no, well done, well done. For our listeners, we're visiting with Victoria Merino, a registered athletic director, and she is the director of athletics at the City of Hialeah Educational Academy in Hialeah, Florida. We'll be right back, but let's hear a word from our podcast sponsor, Violet Defense. Violet Defense is dedicated to protecting our world from germs by bringing the power of UV disinfection to everyday spaces. Their patented technology enables them to harness the power of the sun to incorporate ultraviolet light into products and environments like never before. Whether you're ready to implement existing products or if you'd like to explore researching and developing a custom deployment of their technology for your school, Violet Defense has the solutions and experience you need. Thanks again to Violet Defense for sponsoring the Educational AD podcast. We're back visiting with Vicky Merino, registered athletic administrator at the City of Hialeah Educational Academy. Vicky, one of the things we like to do with the podcast is this idea of sharing best practices. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. What are some things that you currently do at your school that when you look at it, you just say, wow, we do this better than anybody? I know you're a young school, but maybe you got one or two, or maybe you have some best practices from some other schools that you've seen. What can you share with us?
So right now, I think my school's really strong in marketing ourselves. And in today's world, especially in South Florida with open enrollment, you have to nail that marketing scheme, especially public schools. It's kind of harder because they have set parameters of there is open enrollment, but they have to let the people in their zones in first. We're in a charter school. So our people come to us. We don't have like a zone. They have to apply to get in. And the biggest thing in private schools too, you really have to market yourself. You have to know what makes you better than your competition. And that's something that I had not seen coming from upstate New York, where we don't really have charter schools or private schools. And so that's something I've had to adjust to, like using the correct logos and this and that and make it look pretty. And already I made a Instagram post for our volleyball team, and the principal asked me, he's like, oh, who did Mike make that? I was like, no, that was me. And he was like, oh, you're learning. And I was like, see, you taught me well. So that's something already that I think I'm very strong in is marketing. And I think that's something my school does very well is we market ourselves very well in this competitive environment in South Florida.
You're absolutely right, competitive. And I just did an interview recently with an athletic director in Georgia who's at a big public school. And he was stressing the exact same thing, that they're trying to provide the best experience for their student athletes and the best experience for their parents. And I said, that's really kind of a private school model, and he knew I spent the last 25 years at a private school. And his response was, you're absolutely right. Okay, we need to market ourselves these days, because it is a different day and age. So that's great to hear. What are some other things that maybe you haven't quite got them going, but maybe a best practice that you're trying to get up and running at Hialeah?
Well, I've worked for some very organized athletic directors who, coaches are kind of like your ducks as they follow you along. And they've kept us in a line. Some of us might have strayed here and there, but then they're quick to say, hey, remember, and shuffle us back into line. I'm struggling with that a little bit at my school just because unfortunately, they've been kind of left on their own for the last 2-3 years. There was an AD here for a while before me that he's now, I think, he's at a SLAM. So same company, just a different school. And one between him and COVID was only here for like a year. And I guess he wasn't the most organized of persons. And then, of course, COVID. So then there was no AD. And then when they tried to bring it back, it was the assistant principal. So they've had a lot of turnover. So I've been just trying to be more like open with my coaches, but at the same time, like I'm used to coaches who know the expectations. Like we've had the same AD, so it's like, this is your expectation, this is what you do, and year after year we just do it because that's all we've known. So I'm trying to get that organization here where we're all on the same page, we're all ducks heading towards the same area, not, you know, going off. One person's going to like Orlando and one person's going over here. And that's something I'm struggling with, just because they've been on their own and it's not their fault. It's just something that's happened to them. And now here's this new person that's like, okay, this is what we're doing. And it's not that they're trying to fight it. It's just, they haven't done it. So it's been tough, and it's been, we've knocked some heads together a little bit. And, I don't want anyone getting in trouble, but at the same time, I have to set that standard, like, hey, these are the rules and expectations. If we don't follow them, there's consequences, just like there's consequences for me. So that is a best practice I'm trying to establish at my school, is just keeping everything routine. So that way we do run like a well-oiled machine. We come back in the fall and boom, not we come back in the fall and boom.
Well, there is not a single athletic director out there listening who has not gone through that very same thing, bringing a program in and their version, whatever it is, of organization. And it's not a good or bad or right or wrong. It's just, what is your system, and getting everybody on the same page. So I know you're going to do great with that.
Trying.
We are visiting with Vicky Merino, registered athletic administrator. We'll be right back after a message from Sideline Interactive Score Tables. We want to thank Sideline Interactive for being a sponsor of the Educational AD podcast. And we actually have one of their indoor scoring tables in our gym, and it is fantastic. I cannot recommend these folks enough. It's becoming harder and harder to fund an athletic department these days, but Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 a year or more, while also creating excitement in the gym and the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or call 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo to see their tables and boards in action and see what these fantastic products can do for you. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com, and see what their fantastic products can do for you. We're back with Vicky Merino, registered athletic administrator at City of Hialeah Educational Academy. For our listeners, we're recording this on August 31st, so it's going to be pretty timely by the time you listen to it. Vicky, we just came out of watching the Olympics, and tremendous performances by men's and women's teams, and just very exciting, and also increased discussion, if you will, on the topic of social emotional health for athletes and for everyone. Certainly Simone Biles was quite candid, sharing the challenges that she experienced. And so I've been asking some of our athletic directors, how can an AD find a good balance? How can a coach find a good balance between, that old school approach of, come on, you got to be tough, you got to get back in there, while also being sensitive and aware of the challenges that a Generation Z student athlete is undergoing? Do you have some advice for us?
The fact that we're on Generation Z. I'm not that old and they still make me feel old. They use words, I'm like, what does that mean? So I have a balance of coaches. I have young coaches who are even younger than me. One of my coaches right now, he's 23. He's just out of college. And then I have the old school coaches who have been here for 20 something years. And trying to find that balance with them is something I'm struggling with right now. I do teach one class of weightlifting, and we were actually talking about food trackers today in class. And I'm not having them track everything they eat. I said, what's one, you want to eat more fruit, then for right now, track how much fruit you're eating. So they're not tracking everything, because studies have shown that actually can hurt kids and lead them into unhealthy relationships with food. I just want them to pick an area they want to improve in, and we'll work on that one. And then one of the athletes brought into my attention that their coach wants them to track everything. They want them to use the app MyFitnessPal, which I've used before, and it told me to eat like 1,200 calories a day. And yeah, no, that's not going to happen. And so I have to find that balance now of I have to, try and have that meeting with that coach. Like, this is what the studies say. Maybe is there something else we can use? We want the kids to be in shape, obviously, and to be ready for their seasons, especially when it's baseball season and the grind and the long days and the games. But how do we reach a happy medium between making sure they're physically fit, but we're not going to damage them in the long term? And that is something that I added to my to-do list today because I didn't realize that was happening. But it's that old school mentality of like, no, they should just be able to deal with it. And it's not. And I have this conversation with my friends too. They're like, oh, if you're an Olympian, you should just be able to deal with it. But these kids love it. They talk about it in class. They're like, oh my God, Simone Biles, like, I feel that way too. And just to watch her like be okay enough to say, listen, I'm not okay. I need to take a step back. That gave me the power to say to people, I'm not okay. I need to take a step back. And we are doing SEL training, and I'm making all my coaches go, even though they don't technically have to. I told them they need to, because not only do we need to physically be there for our athletes, they need to know they can come to us, and they need to know they can talk to us as well. Sometimes we're the biggest influences they have.
I think your points are spot on, and really appreciate you sharing those. And I'm glad you talked about not just working with student athletes, but also working with coaches, because a lot of times, and ADs, we don't come trained for all of this. So it's good to have somebody with some good information. Great stuff. We're going to take one more break and hear from our new toolbox sponsor, Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. But we're coming back to hear Victoria's toolbox suggestions. We'll be right back. We want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the Athletic Director's Toolbox segment. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your athletic program. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also gives the 95% of the players and parents at your school who really love your program a voice, and helps demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, and then call them at 1-800-738-6466 or email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. That's info@athleticsurveys.com. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. Let them help you take your program from good to great. We're back with Vicky Merino from City of Hialeah Educational Academy. Vicky, this has been really cool connecting with you and getting to know a little bit about you and your program, but we're not done yet. We've already established that you're a young AD, but you've hit the ground running, and you're certainly dipping into your toolbox. Right now, I'm going to task you with sending out another young athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their athletic surveys toolbox. What 3 items are going to go in your toolbox?
So don't be afraid to ask for help. That is something I've struggled with, letting people in and saying, hey, I need help on this. Don't be afraid. There's so many people who are there for you, and you never know until you say, hey, like, I'm struggling with this. Can I get help? And they'll step up for you. So don't be afraid to say, I'm struggling, because we all struggle. You're not gonna, I've had to learn the hard way. You're not gonna be a superhero by admitting that you're not struggling. Like, I was buried. I'm sure I remember our first meeting, I forgot because I was buried. And then I asked for help, and I'm actually caught up today. I realized that I'm actually all caught up. So that is my first lesson. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Second one is, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. I know it can be intimidating, especially for young ADs. And in my experience so far is being female as well. I hate saying that, but I'm on all these meetings and I'm the only, like half the time I'm the only girl. And then we have the big district meetings and I count like how many of us there are total and how many females there are. There's not a lot of us. And unfortunately, I've been talked down to already. And I finally had enough and I stood up for myself in a polite way. I said, "Excuse me, I'm not going to be talked to like that. I'm doing my job and I'm sticking up for my programs. So we need to come to a resolution that does not involve telling me to calm down." I hate that word. So don't be afraid to stick up for yourself. Do it in a polite manner. But if that happens, they have to know that you are professional and they need to take you seriously. So don't be afraid to just say, "No, this is not okay. Let's draw the line." And then the third thing is be open with your coaches. Don't I guess technically I hate that word too. We're their boss, but at the same time, you will go so much farther if you have that personal relationship with your coaches. If they aren't scared to step into your office and feel like, "Oh, I'm going to get in trouble, I'm going into their office." Make it so my coaches come and they just barge in at this point. So maybe I have to talk to them about that. But they come in and we joke around and I can be myself around them. I don't feel like we have that level and they know already, like, okay, yeah, she's in charge, but at the same time they feel like they can talk to me as not like their friend, but their friend at the same time. We're all professionals, we're all here to have the same goals, we all want the kids to be successful. So they know, like, I joke around with them all the time. And the other day, I didn't even mean to, I was texting one of my coaches and I said something like, "If you guys would leave me the bleep alone," and I was joking and he started laughing. He goes, "Oh my God, that's the first time I've heard an admin swear." And he's like, "That's awesome." I mean, he's my age, so it's not like it was, but I said it jokingly. I didn't even mean, like, it was just reactive. But since that day, he's like, "Oh, you're overwhelmed too? So am I." And it was just something, like I said it in jest, that now we have that connection. And he's been helping me. And I said, "Hey, you need any help with the cross country team? Like, workouts or stuff, I got you." So I actually worked them out the other day because I know he's been a little overwhelmed too. So it was just something that broke the ice. And now all the coaches see it, and just everything is we. This is our department. We are here for the kids. We run this department. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about all of us. So remember that too. Don't ever say like, "Oh, it's my department." It's not your department. It's everyone's department. You're all in it together.
You really covered a lot of ground, and it's all great stuff, but it comes back to this idea that you shared about, building a program, building a culture, building those relationships, with your coaches, that, yeah, they can relate to you. They still know that you are the boss, but, it's not a management out of fear. Okay. Very, very cool stuff. Vicky, if one of our listeners wants to reach out and pick your brain, find out a little bit more, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
Either by text, because I end up playing phone tag with people if you call. Text or email is usually the best way to get a hold of me.
Can you go ahead and share that email address?
Yeah, it's V as in Victor, Merino, Merino, at Cohea, so COHEA edu.com.
Okay. And again, if you can't find that, go to LinkedIn. Vicky is on there.
It's okay.
Okay? Vicky Merino, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
No, thank you for having me. I had so much fun.
Well, all the best with the coming year. And again, I'm going to reach out to Ed, but next time you see him, you say, "Hey, Jake said to say hi."
I'm going to call him right now, actually, and be like, "Miller, what? I know someone."
For our listeners, remember the Zoom recordings of these interviews are being uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening today. Come back again next time for another episode of the Educational AD Podcast.